Hey, Scotty from the finals here. What you just saw, was that a face stab? Or was it?
First, Scotty and I will explain how the dagger works, because people think they know, but they actually don't.
What you need to know is that the dagger's hit registration happens earlier on the server than what you visually see. For both the attacker and the recipient, the damage and hit registration occur only after the server confirms the hit and sends the message back.
The dagger also has active frames, just like the sword, but far fewer, and they work differently. This means the dagger's active frames begin almost the very millisecond a player releases the attack and last until the hit marker appears. Right here is where the first hit registers. At this moment, neither the dagger player nor the stabbed contestant knows it yet, but the server has already considered the backstab as having happened. This means the stabbed player still has a 150 millisecond window to turn around.
This time frame increases if there is a high ping difference between players.
This rule also applies to dummies, where no latency can affect hit registration, only the player's own ping.
Right here, the server checks where the hit landed and where the player was looking, then sends the information to both players accordingly. The hit feedback will arrive a moment later for both players, regardless of new player or camera position.
Here's an estimated hitbox. If the dagger is in range during any of these frames and lands a backstab with a minor delay of roughly 150 milliseconds, the heavy will see the feedback.
Did you see me?
Here's an example of what our dagger-wielding contestant is seeing. While the heavy has already turned around and is looking at the dagger player only sees the back of the heavy. This happens because the server and game can't update the player model instantly. Here's a top-down view. From a third-person perspective, this looks like a clean stab. The backstab hit reg happens before the animation finishes, and the heavy's view is still tracking the dagger player with their camera. This means the so-called face stab only happens for the heavy, but for the server, third-person viewers, and the dagger player, it was a backstab. For those wondering why an elbow stab works out of nowhere, here's the explanation. The attacker needs to be within the 150-degree backstab angle to land a clean backstab. If they're inside that angle, it counts. No questions asked. But if they're outside that angle and stab into the enemy's back, it becomes a no-reg. That's why you'll sometimes see an elbow stab that looks like it shouldn't count. So, for the people on Reddit who complained about the so-called face stab issue, it's not the dagger's 180-degree angle that's the main problem. While the angle doesn't change much for face stabs, it does make things worse for the dagger player. The weapon, which is already pretty weak, becomes even more frustrating when hits that feel like they should land don't register.
If any Embark dev is seeing this, please reconsider the dagger's balancing. Now, you might ask, how do clips shared on Reddit, like this example here, happen? There are multiple reasons. First, there's the delayed damage feedback. On the dagger player's end, they see a clean backstab, but the server gives the feedback with a slight delay. With ping, this 150 millisecond damage feedback delay can get even worse. On top of that, player models can update late and desync can occur.
Now that's the server tick rate and hit reg issues, but Dagger has even more issues. The Dagger is sluggish to play with. The movement penalty when charging a backstab makes the player move even slower than a heavy. This massively restricts its potential with other specializations and necessitates using evasive dash. This limits playstyle freedom, which is the opposite of what the finals is about. Here is a side-by-side compare for when Dagger Light and Heavy would race, meaning a Dagger Light can't catch up. One might argue that you can slide jump. That is a burst of movement, but overall makes you slightly slower even. Another issue with face stabs is that the finals has a 100 FOV option, which is really high. This makes the face stab even more noticeable, as Dagger players can potentially be fully visible on the victim's screen.
Then there's the issue that while mantling objects or climbing ladders, players almost have full camera movement. This leads to completely nonsensical looking stabs from the Dagger player's perspective.
Yeah, okay. Again. Oh my fucking god, this is so depressing to look at. Oh my god, this hurts me so bad!
Then there's the issue that when the player camera is spun at high speed, it doesn't update correctly or immediately due to the game's low tick rate. Embark spoke about this in the AMA, but it's not going to be fixed anytime soon, which is why the Dagger needs buffs in its current state. There are also no regs related to falling or moving at very high speeds. The server becomes unsure about the player's whereabouts, and while the Dagger player and even third-person viewers might see a clean backstab, the server doesn't register it. This gets so bad that when you're falling, the server is so unsure about your position that you clip into the ground for a couple of seconds. This leads to complete no regs without even the 50 damage part, because game logic-wise, you see coins scatter but no damage feedback. On the server's end, you were somewhere else, so it was a client-sided hit reg, but that's not enough for the damage feedback to happen. We really love the finals, but Embark, please take a closer look at the Dagger and its current performance. It's a unique and exciting weapon, but its inconsistencies and frustrations are holding it back. With a few tweaks, it could truly shine in the arena. Keep up the great work. We're rooting for you.
Did you just know, Reg?
I didn't even hit.